Okay, you're welcome. Let's just quickly go. There's a website called Edavit. I'm not trying to promote them, but you can get some simple code challenge. So we're going to be starting from the beginner code challenge. So this code challenge is a very simple code challenge, and this is for the very easy, those guys who are just new into a particular programming language. You want to try yourself. You want to see how good you are. So you can start from the very easy. Now, as you know, I'm going to be working on C Sharp. So I'm taking you guys through C Sharp. So you already know the basics of C Sharp, know the some settings about C Sharp. Now it's time for you to put all those things that you've learned in your C Sharp and start putting them into practice, because trust me, without solving problem in computer science, without solving problem in programming, you are doing nothing. So let's look at the problem we have here. We have to convert minutes to seconds. So this is quite simple. We all know that 60 seconds makes 1 minute. So now here we go. This can help us to remember some of the syntax that we've learned in C Sharp. So what it means is that you're going to write a function that takes integer minutes and convert it to seconds. That's all. So that means we're going to be having a method called convert. And that method, when you give it an argument, it's going to return 300. An argument of 5 is going to return 300. An argument of 3 is going to return 180. That of 2 is going to return 120. So that means what is happening behind the scene is that this 5 is going to be times 60 to get this. This is going to be 3 times this to get this. So that's just the whole of the problem. So the problem has just been solved. That's the algorithm to solve the problem. Now I want to bring it into C Sharp. So you can solve it in any programming language you want, but we are so specific here in C Sharp. So let's take it to C Sharp and follow all the C Sharp convention. Now we are creating this method that they never told us to create a kind of a static method or a non-static method. Is that okay? But what I'm going to do, I'm going to solve this problem using the static method. Then I also create one for the non-static method so that we can tend to understand better what the static method and the non-static method is. So let's quickly go on. Now, the method we are asked to create is called convert. That's the name. So I'm going to create it outside the main method, and I'm going to call that method in the main method. So I'm going to call this static method. So this is calling static method. So I'm going to call the static method here. But before then, let's create the static method before calling. So it's going to be static void, then the name of the method, which is convert. So C# have a convention of always using their method, starting their method with a capital letter. So I'm going to follow that convention. So it's not that you're going to get an error when using a lowercase. So now static void convert, then it's going to take some parameters. And what's the parameter they said it should take? It's going to take minutes. So the amount of minutes I place here, for example, is going to take minutes. So that means, and that minute is going to be an integer. So the data type is int. So that means it's going to take an integer. So just guess what is going to happen within here. Now, I just said this is a static void. And what it means is that I'm not going to be returning anything. But in this case, I'm going to be doing some calculations. So I may not want to use this as a static, as a void. So I'll want to put a particular stuff. So I'm going to call it an integer. So instead, it's going to be a static int because I'll end up returning a particular stuff here. So as you can see, I'm getting an error. I'm getting this. Why am I getting this? Because I have to make a return. When it is not void, it means that it's going to return something. So how do we do that? We can just solve the problem by typing return, then 0. 0 is an integer. So once I do that, it's going to just return that. So that is quite clear. So I can then go and write my code as usual. So what it means is that whatever I placed here, is that okay? So I think I'm not comfortable with this auto filling of a thing. So whatever I placed here is just going to convert it. So if I place minute, it's going to convert everything here. So what we're just going to have is just to like console.writeLine what that is. So console.writeLine, or let me just create a variable, or let's just console it out, console.writeLine. So we don't want to waste too much time on this video. .writeLine. Now, this is what the calculation we're actually doing So I can do it by saying return and do all the calculations, but I just prefer doing it in this way. It makes it much more easier and understandable. So I can do the return directly by just doing all the calculations, but I think this is also very good. So what I'm going to do now, I have console.writeLine. So what I'm going to do is that I'm going to multiply that minute that is being entered by the user. The minute, I'm going to multiply it by 60. That's all. So that means whatever minute I enter, if I entered 5, it's going to say 5 times 60. And it will just console.writeLine. Now I return 0. Is that okay? So if I take off this return, I'm going to get that error, that same error. So as I said before, now I can just use this return equal to minute times 60 and boom, we are good to go. But just for simplicity's sake and for us to get our views. Now, we're not going to see anything because we just created a method and the method is not called. So this is where we come in. Now we are calling a static method. I want to call a static method now because I created the method to be static, which means that I'm not going to be making an instance of a class. That's what it means. That means I'm not going to be making an instance of a class. And if by now you don't know what an instance of a class is, I think you should also check some other videos because this is a video on code challenge. So we assume that you already understand some basic syntax of C# for you to be able to take this course. So let's go. Now, the name is called Convert. So we're going to use Convert. That's the name we called it. And it's going to take just one parameter. And the parameter will be maybe like 4. So guess what will happen? That means if I'm placing anything here, I'm going to get 4 times 60, and that should give me the time. So that's just it. So you convert whatever you want to convert it to this, and boom, we are good to go. So that is it. That is the first stuff. So I'm trying to run it, and it's taking some time to run. Now, while it is running, this is a static method. So I'm going to create a static method. The problem has already been solved. As you can see, this is 240. If I change this to maybe 80 or 8, it's going to do 8 times 60. How many seconds do we have in 8 minutes? So it's going to tell us the number of time, the seconds we have. As you can see, the problem is being solved. Now, the next thing we'll try to do now, I want to create a non-static method. So this is the static method I created before now. So I want to create a non-static method to solve the same problem. So that you can just see how static method and non-static method work. So this is the non-static method. So let's see how this works. So you will just say, instead of using the keyword static void, static, we're just going to call the name of this. So we can just say int convert. So int convert. And what is it going to take? That's the data type. And boom. And the time it takes, which is minutes. So we're going to say int minutes. Exactly the same thing you have here. Is that okay? Exactly as what you have before now. So we're going to have int convert, then we're going to have minutes. And what else are we doing? Now you can see we are getting some kind of a weird stuff. So don't worry about that. So the logic is exactly the same thing with this. So we just do this multiplication and boom, we are good to go. So boom, we are good to go. So that's the calculation. That is just multiply the minutes and this. So this is int. I will call it what? Convert. Now it's throwing me an error because I've already created a method called convert. So let's just call this one convert2. Is that okay? So I have a method called convert2. So now let's go back. So the error is still there, but it will be sorted out now. Now I have int convert2. So the next thing for me to do is to call the non-static method. So how do I call the non-static method? So let's go back here and calling the non-static method. So the first thing I will do is I'm going to make an instance of this. So how do I make an instance? I make an instance of the class. So the class I have here is called problem. It's called program. So I'm going to make an instance of the class first. So this is making instance of a class program. So I'm going to make this instance. So I'm going to have program. That's the data type. Then equal to, what do I want to call it? Let me just call this SP. I don't know what that stands for. SP, that's the variable name. So equal to, I'm going to say new program. Then, of course, with the parentheses, that means I'm calling it. So that is it. So this is being called. So it's going to be new this, new whatever. So I can try to call in the method. I think I'm getting in some funny stuff here, but let's actually see what that is. And okay, that has been created. Now it's time for us to call the convert. So we're going to say SP, the variable we created, the variable I created, which is SP. It's time for us to, fire up what we've just done. So it's going to be SP dot convert to, as you can see. So I'm going to pass in a method here, an argument. So let's assume this is 7. Now you can see I'm still getting error. So you can guess why I'm getting error. Who can guess why? Guess why? So there's something I didn't do. What's that? That's return. So I have to return an integer. So with that, the error is gone. So if you're creating any calculation, making any calculation, make sure you use the return keyword and return that variable that you declared here. Now, if I had used void, I wouldn't have had issues using this return keyword. As you can see, I used the return here and I also used it here. So this is going to work. Now, probably if I try to run this, I'm going to get 2 values. I'll get the value for the first one, which I called here, and I say 8, that's 8 times 60. And I'm going to get the second one for this, which is going to be 7 times 60. And that will be it. So as you can see, we have the static and the non-static method. We used both in actually solving a problem and calculating that stuff. That is quite simple. The logic is very simple, but the concept behind it on how C# work, how C# is an object-oriented programming, and to make an instance of a class actually matters a lot. Okay. I think it's still trying to run and it's taking too much time to take like almost for 40 seconds to do that. That's because we're actually using an online compiler, so it's definitely going to take some time out. So now I want you to know that static method, when you use the keyword static method, you do not need to make an instance. As you can see, I made an instance here. But if you're using a static method, you do not need to make an instance of the class. Is that okay?